It's a world of laughter, a world of tears. It's a world of hope and a world of fears. With so much that we share that it's time we're aware. It's a small world after all. 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 It's a small, small world.
Hello, welcome to Humanity Now podcast. Today we're speaking with Yavor Tarinski, and we'll let him introduce himself. Yavor?
Hello, thank you for having me. Well, I'm based in Athens, but I come from Bulgaria. It's both countries in the Balkan Peninsula. So I have been active in social movements for the last 10 years or so. And also this practical activism arose a lot of interest in me into more theoretical thoughts as well towards social change. And I have been writing actively ever since. I have published like 5 years, I think, 5 books so far.
Yeah.
And some of them have been translated into Spanish, and some of them have been also published in Bulgarian. And all of them have been originally published in English. So if someone is interested, can check them out. So the main interest in my writings and in my activism in general is it's a twofold. On the one hand, there is the question of direct democracy, and then there is also the great interest in political ecology. So in a way, direct democracy as social relations that manage the social environment around us, and then the natural relations, the relations that we as societies, we as human beings have with the natural environment. So it is this the core of my interest, of how we as individuals behave, either as in a collective way, as society, or either is with the living and non-living world beyond our society, human societies. So
Nice.
this is like very brief.
Yeah, that's direct democracy. What about the environmental aspect of it?
Yeah, so the way that I understand ecology is that it is a deeply political thing, in the sense that it is not about discovering some kind of technologies that will be not harmful to the environment. It goes deeper than that, because we have seen that contemporary civilization can start like moving away from coal, for example, and other like dirty forms of energy, and can start adopting sustainable renewables, etc., but implementing them in a not so sustainable manner. So, for example, in Greece, there is a huge movement now all over the country of local communities resisting wind farms, huge wind farms that are currently covering most of the mountain tops all over the country. They're destroying like the local nature and making like more sustainable life forms, more sustainable ways of life in these mountainous regions impossible. And the thing is that like these communities most often are not like anti-ecologically minded and pro coal or oil or whatever. But the hard truth is that all these wind farms are being placed there not to serve the energy needs of their communities, but to serve the needs of profits of some big multinational corporations that are in bed with the national governments and, for example, the European technocratic elite. So there is a huge difference. If these communities have decided that they need certain amount of wood farms, for example, or hydropower or some other source they could decide upon. But if all their environment is being sacrificed for for the unlimited greed for profit of like the unlimited economic growth engine, it's of course that it will never be enough nature to be consumed, you know. So in this sense, ecology is always political. We can we can imagine and develop the best type of like renewable energies and still be totally anti-ecological. So what is the political ecology then? I'm thinking of thinkers like Casturiadis or Murray Bookchin, who insisted that first and foremost, the way we behave with towards nature, it's actually a reflection of how we treat each other. So when you start putting other human beings in cages, you start treating them like disposable furniture or tools or cattle, then you start thinking of other animals in terms simply of cattle, thinking of them as tools, or viewing nature not as something that you should be a steward of and you should nurture, but something that you can exploit like a money pot. So we can say that like the most ancient forms of exploitation that led to today's like exploitation of nature can be sought out in the birth of patriarchy and in the birth of gerontocracy, when for first time we had a certain groups of human beings treating other human beings as lesser than them. And so we see this thing with the centuries becoming worse and worse. And then we have the transatlantic slave trade, where we had this like pseudo-scientific theories being developed that African people were less than humans, they were not human beings, etc. And so we have this this attitude towards nature also, that there is nothing worth being sentimental or caring about. If you can extract something useful, you should extract it without second thought. And I liked very much in this new movie, Don't Look Up, when they found this like meteorite hurling towards Earth, and like the representatives of big capital were, wait, they don't see the existential threat, but like we can mine it, you know. So it's exactly this mindset. You see a human being and you say, okay, I can make profit out of him. Then you see living animals, living beings, other, and you say, okay, I'll do profit of them. And then you see also the stones, trees, whatever outside, and you say, I will make profit from everything. This is what capitalists and liberals promise when they mean economic growth. In a sense, economic growth can be simply translated as embedding more and more planetary features into the market economy. And we must not kid ourselves. When there is nothing else to be absorbed in the material world, they'll go deeper and deeper into our relationships, etc. I mean, already it's happening, like in Facebook or other so-called social platforms, where the way we interact is actually the very product that is being exchanged. So that's why you don't pay, because you, by entering inside, you start producing for them by interacting with other users. So this is the core of political ecology, that if we want to save the planet, if we want to save nature, we have to start by changing our society, our ways of life on everyday level, here and now. And you can say that it's here where democracy and ecology meet, because democracy, it comes to propose an alternative. You know, and many have come to suggest that democracy is simply a procedure, like referendums, like plebiscites, or some kind of like deliberative procedures that can run in parallel to the state, to the representative institutions. But if you follow the logic of people power, that is of direct democracy, then you realize that it cannot be simply a procedure. It is a whole new type of a system, it's a system in which everyone have an equal share in power. Every decision is being taken by everyone that are concerned, everyone that lives in a certain area. So in this sense, we cannot think of direct democracy, for example, and capitalism together, because capitalism, by its very birth, suggests that the economy will be handed over to a bureaucratic mechanism called the capitalist market that will be, liberated, in quotation mark, from popular control. It will have a mind of its own, and it will provide profits to a thin layer of capitalists. In a way, it suggests that the economy is something else from the society. And direct democracy, from the very start, from the time of the ancient Greeks until wherever it has been implemented to some form or other, have always meant the exact opposite, that the economy is not something superior over all other spheres. It is one of our human spheres, and it should be subjugated to our will, or in a way to politics. That is, to the institutions that we collectively create, and to the laws that we can decide upon together. So, for example, Murray Bookchin, when he speaks about a direct democratic society, he suggests that the economy will be under the control, in a way, of the demotic of the municipal assemblies. It will be people's assemblies where the people from a given neighborhood or a small town or a village will gather, and they'll decide all questions that concern them. It will not be some other assembly for the economics, some other for culture. They'll gather together and they'll decide that we have this vision for society. We want this and these things being done. So you immediately cannot have capitalism in a such setting, because there will be free market in this way that capitalism is it. There will be free market in the way that there will be marketplaces, producers will exchange goods. But if producers will join into producer cooperatives, consumers may join to consumer associations, etc. But ultimately, if the People's Assembly decides that what you do, your practice is harmful either to nature or it creates people with more power than other, the People's Assembly can say, stop, we don't want you to do this. So I think this is a basic characteristic. We must focus on the political, because direct democracy suggests that the decision making and the collective decision making of everyone, it should be the sovereign power source, the central one above everyone. So in this sense, there will be no parliaments, which suggests, parliamentarism is something that was invented to exist alongside monarchs. In a way, it's the monarch, and in the parliament are the representatives of his subjects. And this famous phrase of Rousseau, I'm paraphrasing here, that the English think that they are free during election day, but during all the rest of the years they are not free. And then Casturiadis corrects him and say that even on this day you are not free, because all these years of representative rule have set a different agenda, have influenced your opinion. So when you go to vote, you have already been influenced by the power structures, by the media, and of course by the huge power and influence that the big capital have.
This is excellent, because you're getting right to the point of what humanity now is about. And direct democracy and healing the planet and giving power to the people. You mentioned here Murray Bookchin, which I don't know a lot about him, and a couple other names. Stepping back a little bit, these are your influences. Who are they, and can you tell us more about them?
So probably the biggest influence on my thinking and practice was Cornelius Casturiadis. He was a Greek-French thinker and activist. He escaped Greece because in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken, or in the 50s, because he was here the situation. There was a civil war in Greece, and like radical thinkers, lefties, etc., were all under danger of being executed. And Casturiadis was being threatened by both sides, by the fascists, but also by Stalinist thugs, because he was also very critical of Soviet Union back then, because he saw it as not democratic, no emancipatory at all. He was a vocal critic, and he go to France. There he started writing a lot. He was co-founder and a very active participant in a journal called Socialism or Barbarie, which means socialism or barbarism, taking some influence from Rosa Luxemburg, but developing much further his thinking, as well as the whole thinking of the collective. And their writings were very influential for the French students during the May 68 uprising. So they introduced this critique of Soviet Union, that it was a bureaucratic counter-revolution and not a genuine revolution. And they also started doing criticism on Marx, on Marxism in general. And they moved away slowly from Marxism and leftism, not every one of them, but Casturiadis specifically. And he became more and more confident in the need of a direct democratic discourse in society, direct democratic movement that will abandon the economism, which was bothering him a lot in the Marxist movement, for example, all this fetishization of the economy. He was the one to say at some point of his works that now it's the time to decide whether one should be Marxist or a revolutionary. Because for him, like many on the left, participate in the imaginary of capitalism. In a way, they think within the same parameters. Production, distribution of products, etc., as the main goals, and also thinking that somehow, like I said before, economy is something separated from all the other activities. It's like the main field where we should work, and if we could make the economy work in a certain way, then everything will come to its place. In a way, this problematic thinking was also the downfall of the Soviet Union, because the party functionaries thought that it is not problem of public deliberation of people getting empowered, but it was more of distributing goods to the people, even in an oligarchic matter, and you will eventually reach to a classless society. But this is not the case. When you limit power to you and your circle, then you create power discrepancies, you create new type of classes, political classes that are very powerful. And we see the consequence of this until today in all the ex-Soviet bloc in Eastern Europe, in Russia. It is the descendants of this oligarchic political bureaucracy that still rule these countries, this part of the world. The other great influence on me was Murray Bookchin. He was his parents were refugees from Europe that went to the US. I should say that Murray Bookchin, very similarly to Casturiadis, they both began as members of the communist parties. Casturiadis in Greece, Bookchin in the US, and then they both moved to Trotskyism. And at some point, they got also disappointed by Trotskyism as well, and they abandoned these tendencies altogether. Bookchin becoming an anarchist and later on abandoning anarchism as well, because also he saw specifically some tendencies of the anarchist movement in the US being too much interested in lifestyle changes, in subcultural issues, etc., and not so much into building on people power and getting in touch with other people. Casturiadis was never into anarchism himself, although he knew what anarchism is about. He was very much problematized with all this issue that it will be like society without power, any authority, etc. For him, it could not work such thing. There will be power. The question is that whether we should find a way to keep power decentralized as much as possible and to under the direct control of everyone, or we will, in a way, leave space, a power vacuum, of which someone will take care of and will become an oligarch in a way. So this was also kind of an issue for Bookchin when he started breaking up with anarchism. He was saying that anarchists are too individualist and too disinterested with politics. This is a very important point for Bookchin, because he also, like Casturiadis, understood politics as the not what they do in parliaments today or in or presidents or in the politics of states, but what we do on the level of where we live, on our streets, on our cities. To do politics means to be an active participant in the creation of the institutions that manage everyday life, the life that we feel. To be active participants in the management of the city where you live, because we have to bear in mind nation states and parliamentarism go hand in hand, because they are huge, they are bureaucratic, and they are non-manageable by the common person. While cities, if not always, there were periods in time where they were taken by the citizens themselves. And as Henri Lefebvre, another important French thinker, said, these people managed to create a real right to the city. So I would include here, I will add that both Bookchin and Casturiadis saw very great importance in the role of the city in a direct democratic politics, in a direct democratic strategy. Casturiadis speaks for units of like 100,000 people the most. That is, people that could some in one way or another gather all together, or a big part of them, like a majority of them, gather somewhere and to discuss and decide some things, like a neighborhood of a modern big city or a smaller town or a village, etc. Bookchin, on the other side, he calls for libertarian municipalism, in a way the libertarianization, but in a radical, not in the pseudo libertarianism that in the US is very famous. That is liberated, emancipated municipalities, where the power will be undertaken by decision-making bodies of and by the common citizenry. That is, everyone that lives in a city or in a municipality in general will take the power via public assembly, municipal council, or something like that. Power will be kept on this level via such grassroots institutions. So these are my main influences, and both of them, I should add, were very interested in the question of ecology. Bookchin developed a theoretical body called social ecology, in which he examines how our social relations influence the relations that the humanity has with the natural world. And Casturiadis spoke that technology is not independent. In a way, the way we treat each other shapes the forms that technology and technological innovation will take, and also shapes the way that we'll use this technology to either steward the natural world or exploit it and self-destruct ourselves. It's a very, how to say, on point a phrase that Casturiadis says that if we continue like that, we'll reach to like paradoxical moment that humanity will self-destruct, will sow the branch on which it's sitting by destroying the nature. Because, like he say, a certain strand of Renaissance thinking has made us to think that we can be rational masters of the universe, of the planet. But what Casturiadis says that this is actually a pseudo-rational pseudo-mastery, because it can never be rationalized, and also it can never be a complete master. We can think that we have mastered the planet or the universe, but we see with climate change, for example, how much we have been lying to ourselves.
This is excellent. Thank you, Yavor. I'm in line with so much that you're talking about, and so is humanity now. I personally have been influenced largely by C.L.R. James, the great Trinidadian activist and thinker. And I was wondering, have you heard about C.L.R. James, and what do you know about him?
Yeah, this is actually very interesting because Casturiadis and C.L.R. James have collaborated together with Grace Lee Boggs on a book called Facing Reality, which is actually an excellent work that examines the human condition in the moment and what could be done in terms of thinking beyond the parameters of today and what can follow. I have read a specific book by C.L.R. James, Every Cook Can Govern. It's a small pamphlet, and it's an excellent work. It's also like in line with Casturiadis, who also has written extensively on the ancient Athenian experience. And I think they both understand something very important, that unfortunately many leftists and anarchists in the Anglo-Saxon world tend to just throw in the trash the whole ancient Athenian democratic experience by saying that okay, they were slaves, women had not rights, did not have rights, so there were also some people that were more richer than other. And of course, I mean, all this is legitimate criticism, but both C.L.R. James and Casturiadis, and to a certain extent also Murray Bookchin, all said that there is something also very important. While slavery existed in the same period when slavery was a fact in ancient Athens, it existed also in almost all the ancient world. And it existed also like 200 years ago in a very monstrous way in the transatlantic slave trade. And women in some parts of the world are still fighting for voting rights, for example, to be recognized as political subjects as well. So all this, of course, it's never too early to make steps in these directions. Of course, we can say that there was strands of patriarchy in ancient Athens, of course. But what was very important is that for first time, and this is both at the heart of the analysis of C.L.R. James and of Casturiadis, that for first time it appeared this idea that a common person can be an active participant in the management of all of society without some special knowledge, some special skills, something that makes him somehow more special than the rest of the people around him. So this was very revolutionary. It is something that even today is being actively challenged by all the official dominant institutions. Technocracy today, it's in a way a continuation of this way of thinking, that we need people that have studied more than anyone else, people that are, for example, more younger, while in the past, in the times of gerontocracy, it was the elder. Today, for example, is younger yuppie type of people that have traveled, that have studied a lot, so we should give all power to them, or some old economist professors with big glasses that, okay, they possess all the knowledge, so let's ask them what to do. We're mere mortals in front of the knowledge that they have heard it. And so what, for example, the title that I love in C.L.R. James's book is that even if you're like a common cook or a shoemaker or whatever, you can still govern. You can be part of the government. And one very ingenious tool that the ancient Athenians had was sortition, selection by lot. So many of the positions in the city administration were selected by randomly among all the citizenry. So it to the modern person today, be it a European or North American, it could seem like a crazy idea that we'll just throw dice and select some people to sit on a certain position on an administrative position. But for the ancient Athenians, where all power was in the Ecclesia to Demo, that was the public assembly, the mere administrations was not a thing of great skill. They believed that since everyone participated in the decision, then some of these people could take some administrative task to follow up to the decisions, to see that the decisions are being followed by the rest or are being implemented. So I think this is like the most revolutionary thing that we should hold. Of course, no blind copy pasting of what happened then. It cannot be. Social movements during the centuries have made a lot of progress, have made great improvements. It was not because of enlightened rulers or progressive politicians being left in power or whatever. It was social movements, common people organizing on their streets, on their places of work, that they have made this progress. And we should never forget that.
Exactly. Excellent. Yeah, because that's what humanity now is about, is power to the people. Every person having a right to have a say over their own lives and what affects them and their family and their community. And everything that you're saying is excellent. Now, we know about you now and your work a little bit. What other people or organizations are still doing the work of Buchkin and I can't pronounce his name,
Casturiadis, yeah, Buchkin. So look, there are people that are influenced by the works of these two important thinkers. And also just to name some more important thinkers, there is like Hannah Arendt, for example, a very profound woman that also has written extensively on council democracy. And also there is a very important French thinker that is still alive today and is one of the greatest thinkers alive, philosophers, in my opinion, Jacques Rancière, who also speaks of democracy in this, again, radical, direct democratic way. And there are movements all around the world and organizations that promote in one way or another these ideas. And maybe most important currently is, I don't know if you or you have heard of the Kurdish liberation movement in northeast Syria that has been known most widely by the name Rojava. They have actually been very much influenced by the works of Murray Bookchin. And their leader, Abdullah Öcalan, who has been for decades imprisoned by the Turkish authorities in a prison island called Imrali. While in prison, this Kurdish leader started reading a lot, and among the things that he was reading was some of the books by Murray Bookchin, and he was very influenced by this idea that the state is part of the problem. Marxism, Leninism was misguided in a way, and that there is this historic tradition of citizens fighting to take control of their cities and in defense of larger empires or states are forming confederations with other liberated free cities. And so this is the strategy that Bookchin calls libertarian municipalism. In a way, liberated municipalities getting together, forming stateless, anti-capitalist confederations. And so Öcalan developed on that and developed a theory called and a strategic approach called democratic confederalism that was specifically suited for the Middle East and the Kurdish question. And in the wake of the Arab Spring in 2011-2012, that took most of the Arab countries in North Africa and in the Middle East, in some Kurdish-controlled areas in northeast Syria, in the power vacuum amidst the fight between jihadist gangs and the Syrian state, they managed through layers of grassroots institutions to take power and to share it democratically among all the local population. And so this, what is today known as Rojava or ANES, Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria, has been such a democratic confederation. And in a way, Bookchin has been an inspiration for this revolution. And also we can think of other such experiments like some urban experiments taking place, like the Milton Park in downtown Montreal, which is like one of the largest housing cooperatives in the world. So they have managed to all the people, the residents of this neighborhood, to take the land, to own it in common. No one owns a specific plot. Everyone owns the land in common, and they manage it via. And in this way, they have taken it out of the capitalist market and of the speculation of the real estate, and instead they're managing it through cooperative assemblies. And so there are many things like that. In a way, indirectly, you can say also that the Zapatista caracols are linked to this tradition. Casturiadis, for example, is quite famous in Mexico. He has been there. Actually, one of my books that is on Casturiadis, Short Introduction to the Political Legacy of Casturiadis, has been translated into Mexican Spanish by CELAPEC, which is one institute for critical thinking based in Mexico. And they have been developing knowledge around Zapatistas, indigenous knowledge, and also direct democratic theory. And so there is interest in Casturiadis in Latin America, let's say, or South America and Central America. And this is very important that such thinkers are being studied by contemporaries. It's not that they should be understood as some kind of gurus or like messiahs, but I mean, these are people that have managed, in a way you can say that what they speak about in political terms is not something theirs, but I mean, they have managed to get different pieces of what humanity's struggles for freedom have shown during different periods of time, and to say that, look, there is these democratic tendencies, these autonomous tendencies, people trying to take the life in their hands. So we should think on that, and I think that this is their legacy of both these thinkers today and of others like them. And yes, there are. I am a member of TRISE, which is the Transnational Institute of Social Ecology, European-based mostly institute, which connects activists from all over Europe, but also beyond that. And we have been organizing seminars, we have been publishing different materials, and we try every 2 years to organize somewhere around Europe a conference, international conference, on which we invite thinkers, activists, human rights activists, etc., to get together and reflect on the legacies of Bookchin, of libertarian municipalism, of social ecology, of direct democracy, all these things.
This is excellent. Yeah, and that's called TRICE, right? What does TRICE stand for?
Transnational Institute of Social Ecology.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and I'll put links to all this in the podcast so people can check it out more. Do you happen to have your books handy by any chance, so you can just put them up on the screen so people can see them?
Yeah, I have some. So this is one of them. It was published in 2020. It's Common Futures. I wrote it together with Alexandros Chismenos. He's a dear Greek friend and comrade of mine. And in this book, as the subtitle suggests, it's dedicated to thinking on social transformation and political ecology. So it's kind of a theoretical examination of what direct democracy is, how it has appeared during different parts of time, and what can we do today to get us into a democratic trajectory. And then we examine what we spoke about before earlier about political ecology and how it's connected. And then there is this one here. It's it will hit the bookstores, the bookshelves in this year, somewhere in the middle of this year. It's by Zero Books, Concepts for a Democratic and Ecological Society. In this book, I jump from one a radical democratic strategy to another, trying to present a rich palette of radical theories that have emerged from the bottom, from the grassroots, and that they all try to imagine a way that can take us to a democratic and ecological society. So with the movements of the Arab Spring, of the Indignados in Europe, of the Occupy in the US and onwards, we see people's assemblies appearing in public spaces, and people discuss. And there were many interesting theories that have merged with academic discourses and have produced very interesting theoretical approaches like degrowth, the commons, libertarian municipalism that I spoke before, solidarity economy, and etc., etc. All of them revolving around the concepts of direct democracy and political ecology. So these are some of the books that I have published, and I think also there is yes, this one here. This is a collective effort. It's dedicated to Murray Bookchin, and there are over 20 authors. I thank for the wonderful painting that is in the cover. It's of Murray Bookchin. It's made by Janet Beale, and it was a generous donation for the book. And so it's again over 20 activists and scholars from different parts of the world, Middle East, Australia, North America, Europe, etc., reflecting on the legacy that Bookchin's thought has left for us, for social movements, and for society more broadly.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll get these books, make sure that we have links in the podcast, and get these books to the American audience, North American audience, so that we can spread the word. Like everything that we do with Humanity Now, we're about action and about creating change today, right now. And what ways do you think that we can today, right now, create this new society that we want, that the people deserve?
Yeah, I have been thinking about that a lot, and I think one of the most important things is that we don't get caught up in what they call revolution with capital R, that often can lead to inaction. So we wait a grand revolution that will sweep the world and destroy the capitalist class and liberate the people, and then we'll think what we'll do. And also we should be careful of not falling into like the trap of like over ideologizing our actions, and also turning into like small sects that are really not interested in changing the world, but in keeping their purity and their elitist thinking clean. So for me, what it's important is that we get our hands dirty. We go where people are. We try to speak to common people. We try to speak a language that is as understandable as can be by people who are not traditionally interested in politics, and try to get them in board. Because if we want to create a free democratic society that will treat nature with respect, we have to get the majority of the of people around us on board. Otherwise, we cannot impose it on them. Because if we go to impose democracy, then it will not be democracy.
Exactly.
If we go to impose ecology, it will be kind of like green authoritarianism, ecofascism, that will ultimately again keep the very mindset that eats the nature and the planet.
Exactly.
So what we have to do is get our hands dirty when there are mass movements and we see that there are certain like liberatory democratic traits in them. We should encourage them, we should support them, we should participate as much as we can. Of course, I don't mean that we go to every possible protest that happens, because I mean often also the far right tries to infiltrate such initiatives. But I mean, when we see that there are seeds of direct democracy, of ecology, we should encourage them, we should support them. Indigenous movements, labor movements, all kinds, urban movements. This is maybe the most neglected today, but a very important form of activism. Common citizens getting together for various urban issues, be it a park, be it the traffic intensity on a street or whatever. I mean, these are genuinely democratic issues that common citizens try to have effect on where they live. Because I remember John Dewey's thought that democracy begins in the neighborhood level, where you live. So if you remember in Turkey in 2014 or 15, if I'm not mistaken, there was a huge uprising that began from a park called Gezi Park. And it sparked public assemblies all over squares around Turkey, and specifically in Istanbul, and countless clashes with the police. And there was this panic in the Turkish governing elite, because like things were going out of hand, and everything was sparked from a supposedly minor urban issue. So we should think of all these type of struggles. We should not fetishize the workers, for example, because I like this thought of Bookchin, and it's something that both Bookchin and Casturiadis share. They tend to insist on the citizen over other collective identities, because the workers are people. Is the identity that one person gets from the work he's doing, but the citizen is it's his role in the city where his work is, where his family is, where his education is, where his culture is. So the citizen is an all-compassing thing. It has to do with the whole worldview, of whole mindset of whole society, let's say. So we should, one very important thing is to start trying to think as citizens, to encourage people to be citizens, which means to care about public affairs, to be noisy, to be nosy, to care for what is going on the streets around them, to not give, to try to take power away from bureaucratic authorities, be it by trying to not leave space to police brutality and frivolity, to all these problems that we know that also torture North America. Um, and also very important is to try to think of self-instituting institutions, grassroots institutions, because it's very important that we try to set up grassroots institutions, democratic ones like public assemblies, etc., from today with people who think like us, and to try to spread their influence among society to be recognized by common people, like with the movement here in Europe with the Indignados that was relatively in the same time with the Occupy. There was this idea that public assemblies should slowly take on the functions that the like local bureaucracies have. And so there were people, for example, in all over Athens or in other Greek cities, going on their squares, getting to know their neighbors and discussing what problems they have in the neighborhood, and then searching for collective decisions on problems that local bureaucratic institutions like mayors or local administrations were not interested to solving because they didn't see them profitable. And thinking in this direction gives fruits, because think of what we spoke before about Rojava. When the Arab Spring took place and there was this power vacuum, um, the Kurds didn't just go and took power, or these cities, suddenly the citizens became conscious and they say, okay, let's take control of our cities. No, there were actually already functioning ecology councils that were coordinating struggles against huge dams that were damaging rivers. There were other type of councils and assemblies that were helping in redistribution of food, of self-defense, because Turkish or Syrian thugs and soldiers were harassing civilian population. So all these like grassroots institutions, when the revolution, when the Arab Spring took place, they were there. And when whole hell broke loose and chaos took hold of everything, it was these grassroots institutions that managed to keep things organized and to keep society functioning, but this time in a non-barbaric way, in a very democratic, peaceful, harmonious way. And it's actually a fact that now in the whole of Middle East, maybe Rojava or Anes is the place where it is safe to be Christian, Muslim, Azadi, or whatever. All this, Middle East has been known for many times now for being like a place of mentalism's reign, etc., religious ones. But what happens in Rojava shows that it is not a people's fault. We tend to put the blame on the common people. We say they are fundamentalists. It's actually the games that the big powers do there, what we force feed them. All these fundamentalist groups like Taliban or ISIS or whatever, they were initially creations of other state formations from abroad, and also they were sponsored locally by warlords who were greedy for power. So when people in one of these areas took the power in their hands, we saw actually giving helping hand to each other and actually practicing mutual aid. So I'll conclude this with this thought by Rancière, one of the thinkers that I mentioned earlier, who say that racism is a passion that is being nurtured from above. It is not a people's passion. Of course, the corporate media today try to say that it's the common people. It's like in the US, the rednecks, the white trash, the poor who are racist, and it's the good elites that are like that. But it's actually these very medias that try to put the blame on the poor migrants, for example, that they take your piece of the pie. And it is from above that they try to homogenize us into one nation, while we live in huge countries. Like US is a huge country, or let's think of Russia, the biggest country in the world in terms of land mass. It's huge. How could all these people be a same nation. Or think of small Greece here. There are so many minorities living in Greece. We shouldn't try to homogenize them all into one nation. We should nurture all these different cultures and try to think other approaches. And here, democracy, for example, direct democracy suggests that instead of homogenizing them, give them local power and then coordinate them via confederation, a stateless confederation, where autonomy remains at the grassroots and power flows bottom up.
Excellent. Thank you, Yavor, so much for your time and for your knowledge that you're sharing. And we look forward to working together and spreading your books and working together and having you back on the podcast to share more to help with this Humanity Now project. So thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward for further collaboration.
Absolutely.
Take care. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.